This is Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Ahead of us on this Friday's programming, this week's grain market trends are broken down by K-State grain market economist Dan O'Brien. He provides insight on the current state of cash markets and the stability that we have seen in grain sorghum exports. Additionally, we have the Kansas Wheat Commission's Vice President of Communications, Marsha Boswell, to report on the 2022 wheat harvest report for the first week. Boswell shares what counties were the first on their combines, data regarding yield and quality, and predictions on how the rest of the season will play out. Finally, to round out today's program, on this week's Kansas Agricultural Weather Report, K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond reports on the severe weather experienced last weekend, the record-setting temperatures seen across the state this week, and what the forecast ahead may bring. That and more waits for us on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. As always, we are starting off this Friday's programming with K-State grain market economist Dan O'Brien. And he is going to give us an update on the latest grain market trends and what he believes are the current markets to watch. So Dan, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Samantha.
So today we're going to start off talking about some hot cash markets.
Yes, I know that that there's a lot of attention around the state with regard to the wheat harvest, and of course when wheat harvest comes in, the normal seasonal patterns that we're dealing with quite often have to do with more than adequate wheat supplies rolling in, the tendency seasonally for prices to be soft or to decline during that time. And it's really interesting to see here with about 3 days in on the very southern part of the state where we stand on the wheat markets, and just really indicative of how strong the world wheat market is and how much concern there is with regard to where things could go in the next 12 months. Anyway, when you look at price, the highest prices of the six locations across the state that I tried to follow pretty closely would be in Hutchinson and Topeka at 11.33, 11.23. Not far behind that, Salina 11.28. These are all very, very much export, processor, mill-oriented locations. Even the out into Garden City, and it's just an amazing situation to consider historically. We're coming into harvest at Garden City, and we're sitting at 11.08 for a wheat price, 10.90 in Colby, and 10.73 out in Columbus in the southeast corner of the state. Since USDA report came out on Friday the 10th of June, it's interesting to look at the trend. We haven't during again we're coming into the wheat harvest time frame, and futures would often decline. The underlying futures price would decline. July futures typically move lower coming into where we're at. Since that report came out, it's moved sideways. Haven't seen any weakness whatsoever. So just interesting to see. I think even on the export side for wheat, there's some positive here. With the USDA really made no changes to their supply-demand balance sheet for wheat. They're really kind of waiting for their a report at the end of September, their annual small grain summary. But even with that, we need a pace of about 15 million bushels a week cash physical product to move. Had a shipments on the week ending June 9th of about 13.6, and really new crop sales in the year that we're in of 22% of the way to the USDA's projection of 775 million, and we're only about 2 weeks in. So really some supportive news for the wheat export markets, for wheat markets overall, for wheat exports, and I think, Samantha, as we look and see how harvest comes into the areas that we're most worried about, again, southwest, west central, parts of south central Kansas, then we'll get that much better of a picture of the supply situation here in Kansas. And if it comes in terms of weaker production, like we're expecting it might, the preliminary reports are, then really interesting to see if we see cash prices become that much stronger. At least the basis narrow up as elevators will be desirous of taking any product that they can get into their bins and to hold it, sell it, move it if they can. So it's something to really watch, I think, for the wheat market in the next 1 or 2 weeks.
Sure, and like you said, that'll be here within the next couple of weeks going into July, so we'll get some answers on that here shortly, hopefully. And then in terms of the overall feed grain markets, what are we seeing in those markets right now?
Again, came out of that same report on June the 10th, and actually we've had some sideways to higher movements on the future side. July futures closed up yesterday to 788 and a quarter. The highest it's been in about 2.5, 3 weeks. So, cash prices for corn, one tremendous cash price, enough that you look at it twice and make sure you've got an accurate bid. In the Garden City, we have at least a listed bid of $9.23, which is a positive basis of $1.35. That was on yesterday's market. And great prices elsewhere, too, an 834 in Topeka, Hutchinson 807, Colby 843. So it does seem like in these western parts of the state that we're most concerned about probably dry weather and having adequate supplies for feedlots, for ethanol plants that are out here, et cetera, and seeing awfully strong prices. Grain sorghum prices, I don't want to short that either. Grain sorghum prices, all pretty strong, really, across the state in a range of about 748 to 783, so strong there. I would say that here at KSU we've been following grain sorghum for a while, for Grain Sorghum Exports for a bit of time, and grain sorghum continues to chug along and have decent weeks of exports. Not barn burners, tremendous blockbuster weeks, but generally good solid weeks. Not on pace. If it keeps this pace up, we could end up at the end of the year with a record high export number, but no 1 or 2 weeks that really drove it all. Really, just good consistent sales, and a lot of that, of course, goes to China, and so we're watching that pretty close. So we stand back and look at the corn market. A lot on the line. We have hot, dry weather now as we come out in the latter part of June, and if the high pressure, hot temperatures would stay around into July, then we'd have just an awful lot of concern on where the corn production prospects would go, et cetera. So we'll see. Again, we talked about the next 30, 60 days being important for wheat. They'll really be important for corn. If we get into July, into tasseling and pollination, and if we have hot temperatures at that time, then you really get a lot of people nervous here in the U.S.
Absolutely. So some important markets to keep in mind for sure in the coming days. And I know you've mentioned some volatility that we might be expecting in the market here to come even ahead too.
Yes. At the end of the month, there'll be the June 30th crop acreage. Well, it'll be the acreage report, crop acreage. Basically, there'll be a stocks report tied in with that on that last day. And
this is coming from the USDA?
It would come from the USDA. It'll give us a picture of where final planted acres are for corn. And what we gain on corn, we'll probably lose out of soybeans, et cetera. So we anticipate volatility coming out of that report. I would say that the soybean markets don't need much more prompting to be volatile. Since that report a week ago, they've been pretty strong, up and down, setting new highs almost $18. So interesting. The more we draw into corn for acres early on, the more we're taking away from soybeans. And then where does the soybean market go? It just seems to be well supported going forward.
Sure, a reliable market for sure, and we hope it stays that way. So, Dan, any final thoughts as we conclude this week?
Just the most volatile of times. The inflation we hear about in the overall economy is certainly affecting us in agriculture. I think some of the biggest risks we have on the ag market side have to do with the happenings in the overall financial markets. And if they have gyrations and issues affecting them, then that affects the amount of money people are willing to invest in commodities. So some of our biggest risks right now in agriculture probably have to do with what's happening in the broader economy and in financial markets, and how those impacts can come over and affect us on the grain side. So it's time to be watchful. especially as these broader issues of volatility affect us, and not just in the overall U.S. economy, but in agriculture as well.
Sure, and like we said, we just got in that latest WASDE report, and we've already seen changes even within that. So the global economy also just having an effect on everything as well as what's going on ag-wise here in the States.
That's right. And you and I, as we go forward, we'll be watching energy markets as well as the grain markets. Again, we're ethanol producers, so we're all in the energy markets now. So ethanol, biodiesel are a good part of what's supporting grain prices, and we shall see going forward.
Yep, you mentioned some strong prices in that earlier, so we hope to see that ahead as time goes on. So thank you so much, Dan, for speaking with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate it.
That was grain market economist Dan O'Brien from K-State on the latest grain market trends. Also, just a brief reminder for those of you maybe tuning in on the radio this morning, we also have today's episode available as a podcast. There you'll find not only our latest episodes, but also our show notes, which often include helpful information and links that are often referred to during the actual show. The podcast can be accessed at any time on our agtoday.net website and can also be found on the following platforms. Those platforms include Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Radio Public. So if you ever want to go back and re-listen to a segment, all of that can be found there, or on our website, once again, agtoday.net. Still ahead of us on today's programming, we have Marsha Boswell, the Kansas Wheat Commission's Vice President of Communications, and she's going to be reporting on what we've seen so far in the first week, really, of this 2022 wheat harvest report. She's going to share what counties were really the first on their combines, the data that they've seen so far, and predictions on how the rest of this season will actually play out. That and more ahead on Agriculture Today. You're back now with more on Agriculture Today. Ahead of us now on this Friday's programming, we have our very first of the season, Wheat Harvest Update. Wow, can you already believe we're already into wheat harvest this year? So we're going to start with the 2022 Wheat Harvest Report, which is with the Kansas Wheat Commission, which coincidentally is located right up the street from us here at K-State in Manhattan, Kansas. And today we have with us from the Kansas Wheat Commission, Marsha Boswell, who is their VP of Communications. So we're going to start with this is our first week of harvest, really. Isn't that right, Marsha?
Yeah, harvest really got rolling on Saturday the 11th across the south central part of the state.
Wow. So, yeah, almost exactly 1 week in. And you are going to provide us with some insight here into how harvest has really gone this first week. So, Marsha, let's start from the very beginning of harvest with day one being this past Saturday. What county was really the first one to hit the ground running, per se, and start up their combines first this year?
Well, Sumner County, Sedgwick County, Harper County, those areas down there in South Central usually get rolling first. Now, some places in Sumner and Sedgwick were a little bit wetter than some of the other places, so it was a little bit farther to the west in Barber County and that area. But what's really unique about this year is that once the combines started rolling anywhere, they started rolling all across south central Kansas and even into some areas closer to southwest Kansas. It's just been going really, really quickly, progressing quickly, and the stands are pretty thin in some areas, so they're able to roll those combines pretty fast and make a lot of progress in a short amount of time. And the other thing is our temperatures are hot. Mm-hmm. It's, 100 degrees with heat index higher than that, and the wind's been blowing, and so that's just drying things down very quickly, and harvest is progressing very quickly.
Well, at least somewhat of an upside to the dry and hot conditions we've been experiencing, then with some of that data coming in a bit faster than usual. So let's talk through some of that data then, Marsha, that has actually been acquired so far. Well, with what data we have so far with just a week in, I guess.
Very good.
Let's start with yield sizes then. With the data you've all acquired at the Kansas Wheat Commission, what so far has the yield really looked like?
So South Central Kansas, while in drought conditions throughout the growing season wasn't as bad off as southwest Kansas. So their yields are, while slightly below average, aren't too terribly bad. They're pretty variable depending on where it did get rain. So, I mean, we're ranging anywhere from maybe 20 to 50, close to even 60 in some locations in south central Kansas. But then as you travel to the west, those yields decrease significantly because they didn't get rain during the growing season. Some of those areas are lucky to get 40. I mean, I've heard a lot of reports of 10 to 15 as you get farther to southwest Kansas. So it's definitely below average this year in terms of yields.
So, unfortunately, below average numbers across the board, but definitely some variation, like you said, being seen in different counties that have harvested so far. Marsha, as far as the yield they have acquired, have you gotten back yet any quality data on this harvest yet?
We do have some quality data, and that's the good news from this year's crop. The quality of the crop is excellent. The test weights have been ranging, I mean, most of them are over 60 up to even 65. Excellent test weights throughout what's been cut so far. And then the places that do protein tests, we found that the majority of the protein is 12 and up. There's a few spots, maybe it's down to 11, but I've heard reports even up to 14. So the protein is there. And we see that typically in a drought year where, you know, yields are down and protein is up. Overall, the quality of this year's crop is excellent so far, and we don't have really much in the way of rainfall in the forecast. Mm-hmm. So if it stays dry and hot, it's going to progress quickly, and we're going to get that wheat in the bin before we have any rain on it that might cause any quality issues. So right now, quality is looking excellent.
Always good to hear of better outlooks, especially in regards to quality data. But as this harvesting quickly pushes onward, like you said it was, where next across the state of Kansas are we going to see some harvesting really start?
So even in the last few days since last Saturday when it started, we are already as far north as Salina, and on the western part of the state, it's up into Scott City, Lane County, that area. So I'd say we're at least half, the bottom half, the southern half of the state is in harvest mode. If they haven't gotten started, they're getting started right now.
So large parts of the state already getting a move on with harvesting, and it's really just beginning here. So Marsha, do you happen to have a prediction for when we will already be wrapping up and kind of ending this 2022 harvest season?
Well, some of the areas in northwest Kansas where they're a little bit farther behind, it's still possible that it could reach to, you know, the 4th of July or even a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I would say the majority of the state is going to be wrapped up by the 4th of July.
Just in time, hopefully, for producers to really get a chance to maybe take a day off and celebrate the holiday then. Marsha, are there any other major points that listeners tuning in should know about how this really first week of wheat harvest has gone so far?
Well, I think as, you know, we look at the price of wheat and we think, oh, it's excellent right now. But we have to take into consideration things like yields of 15 bushels per acre, mm-hmm. and the cost of fuel. One farmer told me yesterday his fuel costs are $3 per acre higher this year than they were last year just for harvest. And with some of those late rains that came in, we've got some weed pressure coming in that the weeds are still small enough that we're going to be able to harvest before we have to take care of those weeds. But taking care of weeds and the small amount of residue that's left, there's not going to be much stubble left on some of these really short fields. So that's going to have an effect going forward on managing the soil throughout the fallow season.
Absolutely. And in terms of some of those issues that producers may really be seeing in their own wheat fields. I know you all at the Kansas Wheat Commission put together some resources, some K-State material that has recently been put out with advice on how to mitigate some of those problems that producers are really seeing.
Yes, we just sent out this week's Wheat Scoop on some of those resources that are available from K-State. The ag agronomy update that they do on a regular basis has a lot of excellent resources available for farmers. I think it's going to be really important once the crop is off to do some weed control measures. And, there's just things that you can do to adjust the combine, which our farmers, of course, know those things, but keeping as much stubble intact as they can while getting all those heads and kernels off those really short wheat plants.
Like you mentioned, things our producers might already know, but good reminders nonetheless. And that's a resource that you all have put out. But if listeners want to follow along with the daily 2022 harvest reports from the Kansas Wheat Commission, where can they find that?
So on our website at kswheat.com, we have a harvest link, and each day's report is on there. There's also a place on there where you can sign up to have that emailed to you. And so we do those reports Sunday evening through Thursday evening so that radio stations can run the audio Monday through Friday. And so it's essentially a daily report. We don't do them on Friday night or Saturday night. But I think that it's going quickly. We're going to have probably a lot of information for this Sunday evening report because there's just a lot of the area of the state that's harvesting now and will be harvesting by the weekend.
Excellent. And if producers are harvesting, can they expect to see you sometime this week or in the coming weeks as well?
Yes, me and there's also a couple other people on our staff that are out and about. I'm in Dodge City right now. I've visited some farmers out here kind of in the southwest area and the south central part of the state, but we will be in central Kansas and some of the other areas in the coming weeks. We always appreciate when they let us stop by and hop in the combine cab with them and kind of talk about what's going on and what they're seeing in their fields. It's very helpful information for us to be able to put out those harvest reports.
Well, Marsha, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I know this is a very busy season for you as well, so thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk about harvest, and I just want to wish everyone who's out there harvesting a safe and productive harvest.
Absolutely. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone here at K-State, wishing that for our producers that are currently in the midst of harvest. That was Marsha Boswell, the VP of Communications with the Kansas Wheat Commission, on our 2022 wheat harvest update. This is Agriculture Today. To round out this week's programming, I have with us for our weather update, Chip Redmond, and we've had some interesting weather.
Yeah, not a dull day in Kansas, that's for sure. We had all that moisture mid last week that really helped improve things. We saw improvements on the drought monitor this week as a result in southwest, northwest, and north central Kansas. Not widespread changes, but just where the heaviest rains fell. And then after that moisture came through, we got hot. And with that heat, we had heat indices well over 100 and a lot of just stress on everything from people to animals to crops with just a big swing with really warm temperatures. We also saw that especially at night. We had low temperatures that were very, very warm. We set a new all-time record warmest low temperature at Dodge City on the morning of the 13th of 83 degrees.
Wow.
And a lot of that plays into the fact that we had all that moisture before, which helped the drought, yay, but it led to increased humidity and as a result kept the temperatures from falling very much at night, which is very unusual for western Kansas.
That weather not only was rain, but also some severe storms and severe weather conditions as well.
Yeah, we had some localized severe weather, obviously around the Manhattan area, pretty high impact event, as well as down into the Flint Hills with that one storm system, confirmed multiple tornadoes, as well as a lot of straight line wind damage, especially around K-State. We had some roofs ripped off and trees that were just destroyed with winds up to 100 miles an hour.
Impactful damage for sure. So you mentioned that heat, but from what I understand, Dodge wasn't the only city that saw some severe temps as well. There was numerous records set.
Yeah, we set just about 60 records for the warmest overnight low temperatures. There were just daily records, maybe 1 or 2 monthly records in there. But regardless, significant warmth for this time of year, and that's saying something in June.
Absolutely.
And then especially those overnight low temperatures, that just doesn't give our body a chance to recover. It doesn't give the crops a chance to recover. To really accumulate good growing degree days, we need that cool-off down at night, and we just weren't getting it. So when we look at the outlooks that were for this time period that were warmer than normal temperatures, that's where we're seeing it. We're not seeing it in record high temperatures.
You've mentioned we went from wet to cool to this hot, dry season that we're in, and this has impact on our soil conditions too, doesn't it?
Yes, we're seeing soil moistures rapidly deplete out. And we're getting wind with 100-degree days, and that really enhances evaporation and evapotranspiration from the plants. And so that's sucking a lot of moisture out of that topsoil, and we're seeing big drops in soil moisture like we typically would this time of year. A little concerned, though, just because of what that outlook is, and as we deplete some of that soil moisture, we're probably not going to be able to keep up very long. And we could start seeing some increased moisture demands pretty rapidly if we keep the warmer than normal and drier than normal temperatures.
That's significant in terms of what season we're currently in, with a lot of different plants still in the ground.
Yep. And when we string together a long period of warm temperatures and dry conditions in the summertime, we could see drought quickly flip the other direction, and we could develop what we call flash drought, which has huge ag impacts if it were to develop and we don't get timely moisture.
So you said we've recent update in terms of our climate outlook.
Yeah, we had the new outlooks released this morning. Unfortunately, nothing really sticks out as overly positive. The new monthly outlooks for July are above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation statewide, as well as the next 3 months after that, and even into fall, where they expect La Nina's weakened a little bit, but we expect it to remain pertinent. We do have a little bit of hope on the horizon. Monsoons are expected to pick up in the southwest and the southwest United States, and we could see some moisture move northeast into western Kansas by the end of the month, but that will likely be short-lived as overall warmer, drier conditions dominate.
Well, not overly optimistic with this weather report this week, but we thank you for it nonetheless, Chip.
Well, just be thankful that we had that moisture last week. It really, I think, it saved a lot of folks because we were really dry before that, and that big bump can happen again. Keep in mind, these climate outlooks are averages over a long periods of time, so month to 3 months is a long time.
That was K-State's Chip Redmond with our weekly weather report. That was Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network.